So we should be live. So I'm going to start talking about the week's events, and I'm going to divert immediately to whatever questions you have and work through your questions one by one. I see that there are a number of you here. Hopefully my microphone won't have the issues that it had last week. So this week was an interesting week for a couple of reasons when we see the continued attacks on Ukraine, missile attacks and things along those lines. And we see the African conference, so the Russia-Africa summit, and what was going on there. I'm going to do an entire additional episode about what was going on there. Okay, so questions just popped up. Ben, both sides have candidates unlikely to support Ukraine, RFK, Ron, and Trump. Do you think that they have a chance, or if they lose, will Putin reevaluate maintaining the war if support continues? So that was in a video that I showed yesterday, in an RT video. I believe it was. Was it RT? Yeah, I think it was. Where the hope is that was it RT? I'm trying to think where it was. The hope is that on the Russian side that Trump will win, and then it'll lose some momentum in America. Trump is a possibility. He really is. RFK I don't see as a possibility. Okay. Richard Key. Okay, he's talking to Ben. If you talk to me, that'll be easier than if I'm trying to go who's talking. Bet Biden is going to get a second term. Don't know. Tell me about your questions about what happened in Ukraine, or what I can answer about that. We spent a lot of time on American politics 2 weeks ago. Let's try to look at what's going on in Ukraine, anything related to the war, the summit, what might happen next, those kind of questions. That would be a little bit more productive. In the meantime, I know this is a little off the topic when I just said let's just talk about Ukraine. I just hit 20,000 subscribers, and people were like, "Hey, congratulations! You must have figured something out." I haven't figured anything out. Immediately after hitting 20,000 subscribers, my next two videos, the videos that I put out yesterday, I thought were like the best videos I ever put out, and like crickets. I can't figure it out for my life. I don't think I did anything wrong, but how to persuade others and how it works. The videos I put out yesterday, when I last looked at them, they were in like 2,000 views each or something along those lines, which is like tiny compared to the, like I was having like 10,000 and 20, 30, 40, whatever thousand. I'm like, what did I do wrong? How did I do this? I still have yet to figure out what is going on with YouTube or how that works. So no, I have not figured out how YouTube works. I don't get it. Okay. Other questions. So, Ben, no, there's no other questions so far. Okay, so back to what I was talking about with the African summit, which was just this week. It's really almost like looking back a year ago. Well, there we go. Hi, Professor. What do you think about what will happen to the grain deal? Okay, well, I mean, I was almost on that same topic. So the grain deal is interesting because a year ago, before we got to the grain deal, we were at almost exactly the same place. Russia was threatening to destroy their agriculture, mining, farmers' fields, things along those lines. You know, I just yawned when I read Cheryl saying good morning. It's 5:05 in Tucson, where she lives. And that made me extra tired for some reason. Good morning, Cheryl. So John says is a thumbnail to get attention. So my problem is my thumbnails. Is that what you're saying, John? Maybe that's what I'm. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. Okay. So at any rate, the grain deal. So the Russians were trying to destroy grain, and they were willing to like put people into food insecurity all around the world. Um, and it was kind of a roll of the dice. And then the grain deal came along because um, Erdogan in Turkey came along and put this together, and then it kind of subsided for some time. So the Russians, I think, thought, "Huh, we didn't that didn't go the way that we wanted it to go, and now they're willing to go down that path again." But they did it just before the African Congress. It's not related to the Kirch. The Kirch is just an excuse to go blow things up that they already were planning to blow things up, and for the retaliatory strike on the Kirch. Um, and I don't think that they want Ukraine to produce grain. So after they destroy everything that they think that they can destroy, they may go back and allow it again once they get certain demands met. And they want things, sanctions taken off certain things. uh, as I understand, it would be like insurance from shipping and things along those lines, because their grain is not sanctioned, but the shipping to get it places, there's a lot of barriers in that kind of thing. So I think that's what's going on. And I think that they're going to have a harder time. Um, they're going to give Ukraine a much harder time before they allow any kind of grain deal to go. Now, they were promising the world to African countries, trying to create their new allies in the UN by relieving debt and promising more oil and more gas and more wheat and things along those lines. But we'll see how that all plays out. Okay. Um, why are you so invested in UK war outcome? I have no idea what you're talking about. Controlled chaos. Vegan runners. Oss. Hello from Melbourne. Steve says, "Don't worry, it's just after 2. Cheryl, power was out for hours, so I went to bed early. Hailstorm." John, a complete. Are we talking about what? This core counts as 10 p.m. hot and wild Saturday night here in Australia. Wow. Okay. Lee Thompson, hi, Professor. Do I think that it's getting closer to a time that the Russians will be wanting to negotiate with Ukraine? Yes, but only on their terms. So the part of the African Congress thing, they talked about how grain is not enough. We need to have a end to this war now, and Russia wants that talking point. They want an end to the war, a negotiated terms now with the new reality of that they get to keep their oblasts, but not in the way that you're asking. So they're not after having negotiating in any meaningful way that would be satisfactory with Ukraine. They're not worn down like that, nor do they have any plans to go anywhere. Okay, did I see that Ramaphosa, South Africa's president, said about free grain? And if yes, what are my thoughts? So he had something like objectionable to say, but I didn't catch exactly what it was. I just remember thinking, well, that's weird coming from him, but I didn't catch exactly what it was. Like, it stuck out as a discordant tone to me, but I don't remember it. Well, I saw Cheryl pop up, and now I'm like, Lavrov's dog here. I'm not Lavrov, Pavlov's dog. Freudian slip. And yawning after thinking about Cheryl being up so early, trying to make it here. RFK won't make it past the primary. Yeah, RFK doesn't have a real chance at all, to my mind. So in the American system, the action is in the primary, and you get to, like, instead of forming the coalitions afterwards in the formation of the government, you have the formation in the primary, and so you have to kind of be with the major themes of your side or the major themes of the other side, and he's kind of all over the map, so he won't get anywhere. What's the root of your interest in war, family, moral? If you're asking me, I just see the injustice of it, and I mean, I was doing a podcast that nobody really paid any attention to about leadership, and just regularly doing that because I teach leadership. And when the war came, I just shifted gears and was talking about this and researching this and thinking about this, and this is what's important. No family connection, moral, sure, yeah. I mean, this is it's just wrong what we're seeing. So I don't have any. I'm not like Georgie. I'm not married into it or anything. Um, okay, let's see. Aussie says by destroying Ukraine's grain export capabilities, they make themselves the only major grain provider in the region. That's exactly right. Russia needs off the ride ASAP due to the inherent instability of situation. Eventually, the casualty numbers will come out. There will be more hits inside Russia, and sanctions keep biting deeper. Yes, but we're nowhere near that place. And Putin is working on legislation to teach 10th, 11th, and 12th graders basic military skills. They're raising the age of military service to 30 and requiring a year of service. I don't know if they required a year before, but if they raise the age to 30 and require a year of service, that just makes a whole group of people that weren't involved in military service now required to do it in the next 3 years. So they're not planning on going anywhere. Yeah, free grain is not sufficient and wants grain route deal reinstated. I don't know what that's referring to. Oh yeah, so talking bloke, you're talking back to what the South African president said. Yeah, that's right. That's what it was. It's like, this isn't enough. Just giving free grain isn't the answer. And yeah, he's right. And it was surprising to hear him say that. It kind of was a foul of the narrative that Putin was trying to put out there. So if you're Putin, it's almost like a mafia boss, cornering the market on something. But don't worry about it. If you're one of my friends, I have it and we'll take care of you. But what about all the other people that aren't going to eat over here? They can be my friend. If they're my friend, they get it. It's just that kind of thing. As a criticality of the conflict begins to peak, and that's given that 3 days turn into 520 days, will desperation and an even greater risk for highly destructive actions. I'm not sure where the desperation is going to come from. If you're thinking that the Russians are desperate, I don't think that they think that they are. They see it very differently. They're in it for a longer term. They're in it to win it. I don't think they're going away. As for the Ukrainians, I don't see them going away. They feel a mortal threat to their existence. They have morale there because they have to survive to win. I read an interesting thing. It's a weird parallel, but Seth Godin wrote once, Batman always has to win. Batman can't lose a fight. If Batman loses a fight, it's over for Batman. So he has to win. It's kind of like that. I mean, it's a weird parallel, but it's kind of right. Like, you think about it, like Superman's indestructible, but I mean, with exception of kryptonite. But Batman, if he loses, it's done. And that's kind of where Ukraine is. They can't lose, but Putin has no will to go away either. Let's see. Thank you, sir. Chris Steele says, coming from an agri background, do you want that diversity of crops and sources? It only takes one bad season. Well, that was the primary source. And then what comes next is ugly if no stockpiles. Oh yeah. So are you asking if they want to be dependent on Russia? Is that what you're asking? I'm not quite sure, but I'd be worried. I wouldn't be reassured by the deal with Putin, and they say like on RT, there's no strings attached, unlike in the West when they give aid. I mean, no, there are strings attached. If you don't vote with Russia in the next time that there's something in the UN, you might be food insecure, and so that's what Russia's trying to do. Cheryl says, I'm concerned about Germany having too much influence in slowing down former Obama officials in the Biden administration. Thoughts? Um, Germany has slowed down lots of things, but I mean, I don't know. So the I don't know. I don't really have any great thoughts on that. Andy says, thanks for all your work covering Ukraine. Most people are covering what instead of asking the why of this war. That's a good question. That's an interesting statement, Andy. Unpack what you mean. I think what you mean is that they're covering like here's the battle map, here's how this happened, or here's what happened here. Um, I I'm trying to again I'm trying to provide context so that you understand what's happening or why it's happening, um, rather than this happened. Why did that happen? That's the way I kind of approach things. I hope that helps make sense. Russia has to win. UK, I think you mean UA. UA just has to not lose, an easier objective. No, not necessarily. So Ukraine's in a weird place where they have to show that they're getting some momentum into counteroffensive, and the counteroffensive is being a little bit rushed. Um, so if I understand correctly, and I'm not a military guy, right? But from everything that I understand, they don't have the right weapons that they need. Like okay, I just spent the last week. I don't know if you can see this on my arm. You see like little bits of paint here. I just spent the last much of the week. It's summer, and so I'm home, and that's why I have the amazing productivity that I have of cranking out 2 or 3 of these a day. I'll come back to that in a little bit. But I've been home painting. We put down new carpet on stairs and things along those lines, and it's amazing how if you have the right tool, things go well. Like think about putting down carpet and you have the tack strips around the carpet and you have this knee thing that you're hitting into the right. If you have the right tool, it goes a lot easier than if you're trying to improvise with something else. And Ukrainians don't have the right tool for this fight. Like if you had the planes to be able to take out the minefields and the artillery and whatever else as you're trying to like. I said this before, and I've got to give credit to oh, what's his name, Surovikin, who withdrew from Kherson, and we're all cheering when he withdrew his entire army from Kherson. Hey, we got that ground back. Unfortunately, what he did was he now still has that army. They're still able to fight, and they put the lines in place, the entrenchments in place. They prepared all the problems that we were seeing right now, and you don't have the right tools in place to be able to deal with it. So they're having to improvise, and they're taking pretty hard casualties in the process of trying to break through, because they don't have that knee thing to hit on the rug, on the carpet, to get the carpet on the tack place. So they're trying to like muscle it with and use a hammer or something. It's not the same thing. It's a hard slog. Um, so what I perceive happening. So it's not just not lose. They have to show some progress, and they don't have the right tools in place. And winter's coming, so they have a timeline, and both sides know it. Okay, Chris Steele says, yeah, pretty much you want multiple sources in case of bad situation. We're talking about grain, weather, war, prices, even the crop variety, sometimes with different strains. Sure. Same in business. You don't want to be dependent on one supplier or, on one customer if you are the supplier. Domestic house painter by trade here. I understand you 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have the right tools, painting. I mean, man, it goes a lot quicker with a roller than with a little paintbrush going like this, right? Um, do you think the next 2 years of USA armed support is safe? Safe? Yeah. I mean, at least through the election, no, I have zero worries. Uh, what happens after that election? Um, I think it's safe beyond that too, because even if Trump looks like he's elected, let's say, I think Congress will pass another huge bill that'll get them through another year or whatever, and then yeah, and then even then, I think they'll put something like a lend lease or something in place so that they can yeah, that they could blunt that. Some things in American politics are baked in before um, in an election before the next election. So there was a Supreme Court justice that got traded out, and Cheryl's not going to like what I'm about to say, but at the end of the Obama term, the Republicans were like, "Nope, we're waiting until the next term for which Trump came in, and we're not even going to talk about the Supreme Court justice." Well, the president gets to appoint, but the Senate gets to confirm or whatever. There was a majority of Republicans in the Senate, and they were like, "Look, we're not going to even look at it. We're going to wait till the next guy's term." That decision was baked into the previous election because of the way that the system works. Like they controlled it, they could control it, and so yeah, I mean that's just the way that the American system works. And if you understand the way that the system works, a lot of what happens actually makes sense. Okay, do I think the next 2 years is safe? Yes. Uh, I want my vodka and pickles back from Orc Mothers. Good morning, professors. You're not clickbait enough. Yeah, maybe that's part of my problem. I'm not clickbait enough. Um, I should, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be clickbaity. That's what you're getting wrong with YouTube. There's something right about that. I found that my best viewed video is one that seems most extreme, and it wasn't meant to be extreme. It was, um, what was it? The Russian media monitor doing their talk show, and I just said like they're losing it, and I mean, they were kind of going off the rocker, but I wasn't like trying to be an extremist. I was just like, wow, they're really kind of losing it. And it's the best video that ever, like in my stuff. And I'm like, it wasn't even that great of a video, but just because it sounded like so extreme. And the tendency is to be extreme in YouTube. And the more extreme you are, the more like polarized, the more just off the chart you are. That's how yeah. And I fundamentally can't do that. Like I try to cite my sources. I try to, those kind of things. Okay. So let me keep going. Cheryl says, ironically, Surovikin is the one in prison. Apparently, yeah, that's right. Jake Bro indicated that Russia cannot fight a direct war, the terrorism against Odessa. Does this indicate that only way Russia perceiver is either time delay or info war that sways support? So I talked about InfoWar yesterday, how it works, and it only got 2.4 thousand views, which is fairly low compared to the rest of my videos. And it was like one of the best videos ever. Look, please go back. If you're watching this, whether now or later, please go back and look at how it works because it's really important, and how to persuade others. I talked about information warfare and how it works, and I used a little Jackson Hinkle clip where he said he destroyed Piers Morgan, and like he went through all his talking points, and I'm like, I don't see you destroying anything. What? And here's how to persuade people. And I talked about how to persuade people. And that one's really important if like you have a crazy relative that you're trying to convince or trying to bring over back from the dark side of like Russian talking points. So at any rate, those two are really, I'm pointing over there because I have another screen with those videos on it. Those two are really important, and they got like crickets kind of views. But you're probably right about my thumbnails aren't that exciting, or I'm just not sounding extreme, like how to destroy your opponent. Like maybe that's what I should do. So at any rate, Jake Bro cannot fight, said that Russia can't fight a direct war, and there's either a time delay. So that's why I was talking about info war, because that's what's going on. There's information war. They can't really occupy all of Ukraine, so I don't see that as a threat, even though they had ambitions for it. They could if the population was on their side, but they can't with a hostile population. And they're hoping, I think, for a North-South Korea kind of extended play that might turn into something in their favor in the future. Okay, Putin's plan to take Ukraine was absolutely why Russia spent so money and effort into Trump. No, I don't think so. So this is a very popular left-wing perception, particularly in the United States. Rebecca Koffler has a different argument, and that jives with Vlad Vexler and others, that what Putin was trying to do in 2016, he wasn't creating a Manchurian candidate. He was just trying to sow discord. He was caught off guard by Trump winning. He thought he was sowing discord for Hillary. And that actually makes a lot more sense. A lot of people were caught off guard by that. But what Russia was trying to do was sow discord in the U.S. one way or another, so that the U.S. is weak and out of the picture. So it's not about Trump as much as Trump would probably argue with you. No, it is about me because everything's about me. It's not about Trump. It's about sowing discord. Dirty hypocritical business. Mitch McConnell claimed advising consent is not advising or consenting. So yeah, but it is. I mean, they are. So remember, so in the United States system, there's 3 branches, and each is a co-equal branch, and they're very jealous of their own authority, and they're not going to give it to here from here or here to here, right? They're like the Supreme Court when Congress was talking about regulating something recently in the Supreme Court. They're like, we're a co-equal branch. You can't do anything to us. We create our own rules. Same thing with the Senate, and the Senate, the Congress is not going to say you can say anything about the Constitution says this is our authority, and we're not going to do anything that you say that we should do. So they're very jealous of their authority, and that's a good thing because that protects the system. Okay, at any rate, I'm not going to digress there. Luis, I'm getting behind again. Luis 4, do I think Republicans can or will win this phase? Russians can't. I have a Republican on the brain here. Do you think Russian will or can win this phase of the war before winter? No. I think that they can delay the Ukrainians from winning, and that is a victory for Russia. If Ukraine doesn't take any ground in a counteroffensive, it looks pretty bad for Ukraine. Professor G, I would like to suggest you consider having a mod or 2 to help you manage the chat. Okay, tell me more about that. I'm open to it, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know what I don't know about YouTube. So, Richard Key, the right tools, huh? According to John Kirby, Ukraine has all the tools that they asked for, well, except for air support, and they've been trying to jerry-rig certain things to fit. Like they don't have anything to really clear the minefield. Like the U.S. would be calling in air support to just plow it, blow this thing up all the way through and then send their stuff in. Vlad Vexler said YouTube encourages clickbait thumbnails and apologize. That's right. That's the way the system works. And so if you're trying to be serious, it's a harder thing. You notice like some serious channels like Jonathan Fink, Silicon Curtain gets pretty poor views compared to somebody going, oh, all the time, right? Like, oh, look what happened, right? That's the way the system's geared. And if you understand how the system works, well, there we are. Good morning, Slava Ukraine, down with Russia, extreme equals attention. That's right. I recommend the book Disinformation by the highest ranking KGB defector. Yep, that's right. I've read another book by him. Cale McConnell, problem with the Morgan Hinkle interview is that Hinkle spewed out so much disinformation in such a short period that unless you're on a level of Dylan Burns or Professor Gerdes, you can't respond. Well, Pierce just was like, really, it's just Russian talking points. I mean, so it's not, nobody was moved by that on one side or the other, and that was the point. Thorstein Hendricks, who's about 15,000 without going to extreme. Who? Thorstein Heinrich? I don't know who that is. Thorstein Heinrich. Let me cut and paste that if I can. Thorstein Heinrich. All right. Well, I got some homework. I'm gonna look up who that is and see what maybe they're doing. Tell me about the moderators. How does that work? Like, would somebody like pop up something for me so that I can see like answer that question? Because I'm just trying to answer all your questions, and it's rough. Apologies for the questions. Like, what are you doing? Thanks. I don't know what that means. How long do you think you would take Ukraine to recover from this war, assuming they win? It's going to be a generation to get everything back in order. I mean, it'd be like London after the Blitz, right? Good afternoon from Sweden. We got a lot of Vantics here. Most of them are migrants from North Africa and younger former Yugoslavia, Northern Europe. Yeah, So yeah. Yeah, I can see why certain places would be aligned with the Russian lines. The U.S. could defeat the Russians in a couple of days. Well, it could still be a hard slog. And so part of this is that we always go into a war thinking it's going to be really quick. We'll be done by Christmas, and it generally doesn't work out that way. It could still add up to a lot of casualties. And so you want to avoid these kind of things rather than go into them. Ukraine looks like it has opened up a path to Mariupol, potentially, maybe. And it's a hard slog once to get through those entrenched lines first. And once they get through the entrenched lines, it's like clear sailing comparatively. I don't know how it works from the inside. However, I do see that you have, if you have mods, they'll be able to pick out and hand you the questions. Oh, that sounds cool. Anyone here mod anywhere else? Great question, Ozzy. Thorstein is Military Matters. Mod watch the chat to avoid problems in the chat. Thorstein Henrik, Military and History Channel, Australian YouTuber, painstakingly balanced. Like the sound of them. Dub Big Cat, make sure you're not get pro-Russian moderator. Oh, good point. Germany after World War II would be a better example. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I was talking about. It takes a while to rebuild and get things right. Are we going to see the same thing again this winter? Are you taking out civilian electricity networks, or will they be targeting something else? Don't know, but it looks like we're going to be back to another winter where we're still at this. But I don't know what they'll be after. Ukraine will be an ultra-modern country eventually with new infrastructure and buildings. And that will be the upside. It'll get rid of some of the ugly Soviet-era buildings that they're unfortunately destroying for no reason. I've seen some ugly Soviet architecture. I've been to a number of Eastern European countries, and so it will be rebuilt and it'll be newer. And thanks again for your balanced approach between right, left, fact, and propaganda, science, and emotion. Nice weekend from Sweden. Thank you very much. Just one of the best behaved chats I've had the opportunity to experience. Thank you, or thank all of you for being behaved. It was mean putting Constantine at 2 times speed. Should put you at 8 times speed. Mean? What do you mean? That's how I listen to Constantine. That's the only way to listen to Constantine, because he talks slowly. So I only put him at 2 times speed. John Hoover says, hello from Uzbekistan. Well, obviously, I'm not welcome here. Pity. I don't understand why you're not welcome here. How is Russia going to work with so many men taken out of the economy, get terminated, mentally scarred, or disabled? Well, they're going to be pulling people back because they're going to try to pull people back, because now they're going to try to say by phone, you're now wanted, like that. You're now wanted for military service, and because you're now wanted for military service and a new law says up through 30, you need to come back and fight for your homeland, and if they don't, they're going to have other problems. Uh, how do you feel about Western arms production? Are they ramping it up enough? I heard USA is low on shells. It depends on what kind of shells. And so the dumber the munition, the quicker it'll be comparatively to produce things. But if you're wanting the smarter technology, it takes a while or it takes longer. That's a very rough cut, by the way. Don't say, well, this shell takes longer because John Hoover says, question, what are your thoughts on Russian meeting North Korea? Desperation. How many gas stations did Lukoil open in the U.S. since the war started? That's a great question. I have not tracked that, but I need to go look at that. Love listening to Constantine. Don't miss any of his videos, but yes, he delivers slowly. Hi from the Isle of Man. I can imagine some countries taking advantage of Russia's weakness to take back historic territories. I just don't see anybody doing that anytime soon. Um, Faster speed hurts your ears. Hi from Germany. Since World War II, we know how to rebuild. That's why we've been there to help at time of rebuilding after. Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, that seems legit and fair. I can confirm that there's a lot of old buildings in the Soviet Union, pretty ugly. Never liked them. Yeah, they are ugly. These were all the modern buildings. They're the ugliest ones, and that's like at the University of Virginia, the ugliest building on campus is the modern-looking architecture building. It was built in the 60s, and it looks like it was built in the 60s. Okay, so I have questions for you. So tell me about how moderators might change this. And then I've been toying with Patreon because I'm at somewhat of a crossroads. Like I've been pretty productive over the summer, and that's because it's the summer. When I get to the fall, I'm going to have to slow down. And if I have to take on an overload course because, I got to pay the bills, if I do that, then that will slow me down even more. Patreon can counterbalance it, but I don't know enough about it in order to do that. I know that there could be like different tiers of things, but it's not something. Is that something that is useful? Is that something that I should avoid? Tell me what your perceptions are about that. I would appreciate that. I want to answer the questions as they come through, and just tell me whatever you understand about that. Because like again, I'm home for the summer. I'm painting. I'm doing all these things that I couldn't do during the school year, including like pumping out 2 or 3 of these things a day. And each of these takes a long time, believe it or not, to research, to get my facts straight, to be able to triangulate on facts, trying to understand what's going on. Okay. A few other things came in. Do you like beacon? Do you like liver? I think you mean bacon and liver. I don't like liver. Cheryl Waitley says a mod to consider. I'm considering that. I don't know who I would tap, but I'm sure interested in the thought. A couple of years ago, at George Freeman predicts Poland will be a superpower. Poland will be a superpower with the increase of the Polish military capability and alliance with Ukraine and NATO. Poland is rising with the Baltics, and the Poland-Baltic-Ukraine bloc will be a counterbalance to a Germany or France within the European Union. To my mind, I don't know that they have to be at odds with each other, but it will balance interests, because basically Germany and France are like the top dogs in the EU. I would subscribe to Patreon as long as the cost is okay. I'm a modern art masterpiece. So ugly. I'm a modern art masterpiece. I don't know what that means. Hello, everyone. Okay. Ozzy says Patreon operates in Russia. Buy Me a Coffee does not, and it's more ethical. Yet another, so Patreon, it's not from Russia. It just operates there as well. Do you think that Putin is hanging on to avoid the outcome of the U.S. president? Yeah, I mean, Putin's hanging on, hoping that something can break his way, and that could be political breaking his way, that could be militarily, but he doesn't plan on going anywhere. Why some Western companies are still doing business in Russia, that's baffling to me. They should just get out. And like Putin just nationalized a couple of companies, and like kind of jokes on you, like you could have left, taken the write off, but now you are basically enslaved to whatever Putin decides to do with you. Wouldn't it be nice if the Russophiles would put that much research into their commentary videos? Well, yes. If they did, though, they might have a whole different problem set in how they do their videos. Hoover says moderators to keep the trolls at bay. I don't really have a lot of trolls, or if there are trolls, after they prove that they're a troll, I just ignore them. Patreon allows for less censored content and would allow better income stream if enough crossover with YouTube. Moderated chats become one-sided opinion chats. Not good in my opinion. Well, I mean, I think if I choose the moderators right and just tell them like I want to keep on track and that's all. But if they know me and what I'm trying to do, that I don't think that's going to be a problem. Russia war against Ukraine has made containing Russia very important. That's correct. Thanks for thanks for saying the whole name. I couldn't stop laughing, but but that's responding. But stay to your strengths, the truth. He's pretending those Luke Oil questions don't exist. LOL for the colonist. And so if you're asking about Luke Oil, I don't know much about how many Luke Oil businesses have gone into it, but I just made a mental note to look at it. So I'm not ignoring that if that's what you're saying. Miss Bonker says Patreon pays to Russians go to the coffee thing. So that's interesting because I saw other prominent UA tubers, as I call them, had that as part of their process. Should North Korea be considered subsidiary of China where arms support for Russia is concerned? Perhaps. I mean, North Korea doesn't have a lot going for it except that they can supply some extra arms and munitions to Russia and perhaps some warm bodies when they run low. The presenter sets the policy, the moderators will follow. So moderators, if I'm understanding you, I would draw from like you. I would say like Ozzy, can you moderate? And then Ozzy would agree and show up and be able to do something. Or I think if that's how that works. Lee Thompson, I'd like to see you do a live stream with Jonathan Pierce and Jake. Well, I've done one with Jonathan Pierce before, twice actually. Don't know if that would be possible. As Patreon, I use to view other creators, and I like it easy to use, just in my opinion. I want my vodka and pickles back from the Orc Mothers. Has a message retracted, so I'm not going to answer that one because I don't know what it is. Typo, thanks for responding, was what I meant. Mitch Ashdown says this is working, but if it gets bigger, ask folks to use Professor Gerdes for questions, and they will be highlighted for you. Oh, really? So if you do that, if you use Professor Gerdes for questions, it'll be highlighted for me and pop up. Okay, well that's interesting. I was wondering how some highlighted. I'm learning too. How long do you, I see somebody just did that. How long do you think the new Cold War will last? I don't know. That's a good question. It depends on how things work out. Can you type Luke Oil stations in my area into your phone and see what pops up? I will research the Luke Oil question afterwards, but I'm not going to not answer these questions in the meantime. Okay. It's a chat police. Cheryl says, I can't afford Patreon. Too hard to navigate getting signed in. I got out. Patreon kicked Combat Veteran Reacts off the platform because he shows the war, I guess. Well, that's interesting. I thought that's what he relied on for stuff. Kale McCullough, we want to see a live stream with Jake Bro, Professor Gerdes, and Dylan Burns. Ozzy says different YouTubers have different policies for their moderators. Some just ban the obvious swearing abuse. You can still set a policy for what you choose. And I see the highlights here with what Ozzy just did. So that's good. So if you could use Professor Gerdes as a thing that would pop up, so I know that you're not cross talking to other people. Please do a video with Jake Bro. I know you both already have a full plate, but that would be a hit in my opinion. I would be absolutely happy to. He's a busy cat. We'll see how that all plays out. John Hoover says the Ukraine-Russia grain, seed oil, and fertilizer situation is worrying as so many could suffer. Zehan's prediction on grain shipments look like they could come to pass. So Zehan was saying 2 days ago that Ukraine agriculture is finished. I don't know that I'm quite so gloomy, but at least in the near term, they're going to be in a world of hurt. Getting things out of the country is just terribly difficult if you can't use ships. One, you can't store them because they're blowing up the storage facilities too, and beyond being under attack and whatever. So it'll come back like anything else, but when it'll come back is going to be the question. Miss Bonkers, Ted his own website with the same. I don't know what that means. Miss Malayas to why Turkey, as NATO country, doesn't want to close the Bosphorus for Russian grain export. So that's a really good question. Turkey could close it and say, look, you play nice or nobody's bringing grain out. Like if you're going to close it, like they do control it, but they also don't want to. Turkey has its own interest, and they don't want to inadvertently piss off the Russians if they can avoid it. But they're trying to follow their own interest, and their own interest is looking like they're rising above it. And I'm not sure how to phrase that any better. Have you appeared on Silicon Curtain yet? He's a good guy. He's actually come to my channel, and I interviewed him asking, like, what did you learn about, like, go into my playlist about collaborations, and you'll see Jonathan Fink and I talking about what he learned on it through all of his interviews. It was a great conversation. Again, it also got low views because it was a serious conversation rather than like they're destroyed. Okay. Will Russian provocation against U.S. drones in Syria anger lukewarm Republicans into supporting Ukraine? Surely attacking American assets is a red line. Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting that I just discovered recently is in the polling about Republicans, it's not just a pro or against Ukraine. There's a level of intensity compared to other issues. And you hear this in the way that they talk about things. You hear them talk about how, well, we have all these other problems in these cities and the border and the this and the that and all the other things that they list. It's low in their priority for the most part, particularly on the populist side, but in Republican land, it doesn't make it into the top 5 issues much of the time, where I think it's terribly important. Many Republicans just don't see it as a high priority. That's good and bad, because if that's the case and you can raise it's bad because it's where it is. But if you can raise its priority level, and its priority level raised when the Wagner Rebellion, Freedom March, whatever happened, the Republican support got raised. They saw something positive starting to happen. So this thought hasn't fully developed, won't come out of the oven, or it shouldn't come out of the oven until I have thought through it. But you raised an interesting concept. Okay. Combat Veteran Reacts created his own website, so he uses it now for non-YouTube concepts. Subscription prices are reasonable. I don't understand subscription prices or whatever either, so I'd have to learn a whole lot about this kind of thing. But I'm just trying to understand what you all understand. You have a great video about how Russian propaganda works, but your conclusion about the result and what ordinary people think is absolutely wrong. Shouldn't base your research on Russian propaganda. Tell me what's wrong about it. I'm curious why you think that. I've been learning a lot and course correcting over time, so help me understand. Cheryl says, I tend to watch and share serious conversation channels more. Yes, you do. And you're a fount of wisdom for resources. John Hoover says, the problem with maritime shipping is insurance. That's right. Oh, one commercial ship gets attacked, the insurance gets pulled, game over. Plus, all the Russian oligarch yachts have scarpered Turkey and still has direct flights to Russia too. Turkey is making money. Does Ukraine really have to prove that they can make progress without the right tools to receive continued aid from the West? It's not just aid, it's also attention, enthusiasm, other support. It's that they like show us something, and our expectations were sky high given the Kherson and Kharkiv offensive, and we were somewhat not realistic given that the Russians had 6 months to build these trench lines and defenses. Okay, thank you for your work. If you have time, I highly recommend that you do stream with Gary Tabach, pro-Ukraine Republican, and I don't know who that is. Gary Tabach, uh, former Putin's advisor. Huh. Okay, I'll look into who they are. I'm still catching up. Um, USA likes war 10 years in Afghanistan. Ukraine will be the same. Well, I don't know. I don't know that it has to be, but I don't think Putin has any intention of getting out anytime soon. Some of my friends will only watch Ukraine content if it's presented with comedy. I get that too. Yeah, there's something to be said for infotainment. I understand that, but I just don't know that. I Some subjects you just can't really spend a lot of time with entertainment. You have to deal with seriously. Combat Veteran Reacts uses a Wix website. I built a bunch of them. Then he doesn't have to give Patreon a cut. Oh, he has his own like direct thing, is what you're saying. And I'm sure Patreon takes a cut of whatever. I mean, so does every other system, I'm sure. What's happening with the drones and Romanian ship? It showed up in the news, and Forcer was basically swept under the rug. No one is talking about it. There's a video, and I thought every inch of NATO. So the Romanian ship, they got a little flack from I think it was Remy, whatever the name of the city was that they attacked within Ukraine. Nobody was hurt. There was no anything there, but there was some little shrapnel or bits or something of that got onto it. That was very, very dangerous. If the missile was errant, and I believe that the missile that hit the church, this was talked about just a few days ago. I'm trying to remember which video where. Huh. I was talking about the Ryan McBath video where he was talking about how he thinks that the church wasn't a direct target, that just went off course, and they're actually not good enough to hit these precision strikes. Sometimes these missiles misfire. That could have been very, very dangerous, plunging us into World War III if we were, not careful here. It's interesting to watch the evolution of information warfare with the internet and social media. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that you can find these things in real time. Here in Uzbekistan, it's all Russian TV and media, and propaganda is rife and pervasive through all the news. I've showed your channel to friends here, and they love it. Thank you for sharing that. To the degree that you all share this, it spreads like when you share on social media, you're helping me more than you could do about anything else. Helping me help you spread this kind of thing. That information warfare thing, by the way, it has like 2,000 views. Please go and see how it works. Who just said that about in Uzbekistan? Let me see where this was. John Hoover in Uzbekistan, Russian and TV and media. Not my last video, but the one before that. How does information warfare work? There was a guy that was a New York Times columnist, speaks Russian fluently, and so he spent 5 days doing nothing but watching Russian TV, and not just news, all the shows. And in like a soap opera, they're talking. The doctor comes out and says, this. By the way, you should eat onions for your health. And by the way, the best onions are red onions from Crimea. And so they're infusing everything that they're doing with propaganda, even in daytime talk shows and reality TV shows and everything else, because they control it. So please go watch how it works. And Hoover, tell me, am I right? Is that how that works? Is that fair? Ozzy says, I may recommend the most underappreciated coverage of Ukraine please have a look at Andrew Perpetua for the best granular coverage on the front. Okay, I'll look at him too. Cheryl Waitley says NATO seems to lack a strategic goal for victory in Ukraine. Well, they're a little hesitant to say what Zelensky has said. That's for sure. Church of the Transfiguration. That's right. That's what was hit, and I don't think it was intentionally hit. Where it looked like maybe they were doing that on purpose. Ryan Macbeth thinks otherwise, and I talked about that in a previous video where we covered that kind of thing. What do you think about calling Putin's bluff by sending U.S. flagged manned cargo ship to Ukraine? Dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Possibly a good idea, but dangerous. Why is everyone here talking about other channels? They're just giving context and background. Good morning, Professor. Vegan Runner, Accidental Medic says, Professor, yes, that's fair. Yeah, so that's really interesting that they do it that way. Watching 5-day of Russian TV really should qualify someone for an award. Tell me about it. I mean, I spent a lot of time. Somebody was like, I can't understand how you can read so much Russian propaganda. Well, I read this stuff, but after a while, it gets almost cartoonish. Like, I know you're lying. You know I'm lying. I know that I know you're lying. It's a weird kind of thing. Can you speak with a channel operator about how moderators work? It's impressive that you're successful on your own. What's a channel operator? I'm sorry that I don't even know that. Do I need to do something different? Like, or could I just like say, who wants to be a volunteer? And Ozzy says, I want to be a moderator, and I just plug them in somehow. I'm not saying Ozzy needs to do it, but I'm just saying, like, is that how that works, or is it something more intensive than that? How do we NATO handle Hungary not helping out Ukraine's effort? We still have Article 5 should encompass Hungary anymore. Yeah, Hungary is recalcitrant, and they're the fly in the ointment. This is the problem when you have to have everyone agree on something. This is why we use majority rule, because then you have the majority's opinion, and that can override the minority, and I get that. But otherwise, you could potentially have the minority overriding the majority. Do you live stream at the same time every week? Pretty much. I try to shoot for about 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. It just tends to be the convenient time. So that's what I'm looking for. Do we need an independent 8 a.m. Eastern time, which is not convenient for Cheryl? And I know I lose some American audience at the same time, but I'm also recognizing that there are people in other parts of the world. John Hoover says, Professor, if the Russians fired from one of the Black Sea ships, it could have been an Iskander missile, which locks onto the largest thing in the target zone. Thus, the church gets hit. And that's kind of what Ryan Macbeth said. I'm trying to remember which video it was last week where I talked about that, because I know I did talk about that in one of these videos. Evil or incompetence. If you go back to evil or incompetence, I talked about it in that video. Okay. Okay, so we're at about an hour. So last couple of questions and we'll be done. We're all here. We're here for Ukraine. When you choose a moderator, you give him a so-called wrench, is a tool that you can have as a coherent creator. Only you can do content creator. Only you can do that. Okay. Does Zelensky have a cocaine problem? I've never heard anywhere on either Russian media or anywhere else, any other Western media. Never heard that question raised at any place from anyone. So I would say probably not. They also found cocaine in the White House recently. So who knows? But that's not a question that I've even seen raised on Russian state media. So how can the and so if they wanted to spread that message, they could very easily just interject it into the conversation. How can the United Nations be made effective? It's as effective as it's going to be in its current form. Vlad Vexler talked about how it's its ineffectiveness allows it to exist, because countries jealous of their freedom are not going to allow a supranational body to have actual power. So they can talk about things, but if they once you infuse them with power, that's a whole different ball of wax, and then it's going to receive a lot of opposition. From a couple weeks to discover your channel, it's one of the best for Ukraine war. Follow Dennis, Jack, Jake, Vlad, Russian Dude, and Ukraine Matters. Greetings from Croatia. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you like the channel. Russian Z trolls always talking about Zelensky having a yeah. That's new. Is that a new thing that they started talking about that? Okay. Why haven't 100 of your viewers smashed that like button yet? That's a good question. If you could hit the like button, you could help me, and I would appreciate that. Thank you for raising that question. Thanks, Professor. More like Zelensky have a Russian problem. Yeah, I see that. The moderator name will be highlighted in blue so that everyone knows who the moderator is, and that's it. Okay, I understand that. Like any organization, if the representatives want to be effective, they can. Yeah, but there's only so much. Oh, it's kind of cool seeing the likes going up from 107, 108, 109, 114, 118. It's kind of fun to watch. Yeah, there's only so much that they can before the organization shifts from what it's doing to something other, and then it becomes yeah, a whole different ball of wax. Okay. I'm from Australia and looking for intelligent conversation about the situation. Zelensky is very hardworking and dedicated to saving Ukraine. I'm from Spain. Do you believe a nuclear war may happen? I think that a nuclear war possibility is pretty unlikely, at least in the current state of affairs. I think that, look, the Russians talk about we have nuclear weapons, and Medvedev is constantly talking about how we should be using these nuclear weapons. That's just saber rattling. The U.S. has nuclear weapons. How could it use it in Afghanistan or Iraq? No, you can't. Just because you have a nuclear weapon doesn't mean that you're able to use that in any situation or in the current situation. And so I just don't see it. It becomes more likely if it becomes a NATO versus Russia, and that scenario becomes a NATO versus Russia and maybe some others that we don't know about yet. Maybe China becomes involved at that point, and that becomes very ugly. And especially if there's a huge incursion into historical, and when I say historical, pre-2014 Russian borders, that becomes potentially a problem, but I don't see it in the near term. Okay, last few questions. When choosing a moderator, it's best to study your chat for a while and then try to select the most intelligent and conciliatory person available. Okay, I love President Zelensky. He's got a cool story. He's played being, I wrote an ebook about him. It's on Amazon. It's I Need Ammunition, Not a Ride, and you can get it for free if you have Amazon. What is it? Not Prime. The Amazon, whatever the Amazon thing is, where you get your free packages free all year. If you have that, it's free. Otherwise, it's like $4 or something like that. I put it low intentionally. So I think very highly of Zelensky, and I've come to appreciate. I started by studying Zelensky, and then over time, I've come to really appreciate whatever it is about Ukrainian culture or Ukrainian character. I came to it backwards rather than appreciating Ukraine and then Zelensky. I started focusing on Zelensky and then grew to appreciate Ukraine. Do African countries have to show support for Russia to get grain and avoid being destabilized? Yes, this is the hook. That's what's going. That's what my very next video is going to be about. Is about the game that they're playing with Africa right now. It's Amazon Prime. Thank you, Cheryl. What's your thoughts on Wagner in Belarus? Coup against Mr. Potato Head? Maybe I haven't figured it out yet. I can't. I just don't know. Okay, so we're at a little over an hour, so I'm going to end there. Thank you all for your time and caring about Ukraine and being willing to listen to me drone on for upwards of an hour. Again, if you got some value and you want to help spread this video, if you could hit that like before you go as your very last thing to do, I would appreciate it, just so that it can spread. All right. Thank you all. I will see you again, hopefully next week. Tomorrow will be my update video of the week's events, which mostly were like the African Congress and things along those lines, trying to a little bit more about the Kirch and why Putin's doing what he's doing, the Moscow strike, those kind of things. All right, folks. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.